Dr. Patel, I'm duty-bound to start with you. Today, Mike Pence said that Oklahoma had flattened the curve in advance of the president's rally. They've done nothing of the sort. A graphic of various nations in the world in the New York Times today shows Spain, Germany, Italy having crushed it. The United States still continuing at the same level of cases. The president insisting Texas and Florida are doing great. They are not. My question is, where's the CDC? Where are the other elements of his government? Where would the CDC be in saying that maybe a gathering of 20,000 people in one arena, 60,000 in an overflow convention center, may be what you yourself have called the ultimate tinderbox?
Well, the CDC has been just silently, they've either been absent or they've just been releasing, on a Friday afternoon, some guidance that goes unnoticed in light of what I'm going to call kind of a triple pandemic. You've got the virus, you have the systemic racism that the leadership is promoting, and then the third is this pandemic of misinformation, saying that we've got it under control and that an increase in cases is simply from an increase in testing is just not true. We have an increase in the proportion of positive cases that is exceeding what we have had before, meaning we have had more cases that have turned positive despite increasing tests. And that's unlike New York State or Italy, where we have triple the volume of testing, but a much lower rate. So they're just obfuscating the facts. And the CDC and other public health officials have either been silenced or they've just not been allowed to speak up, even despite knowing the facts.
Ashley Parker, is the constant here in the playbook something close to stagecraft, telling us his own reality on coronavirus, wanting no seeming connection to coronavirus, wanting no seeming connection to the clearing of peaceful protesters from Lafayette Square?
Yeah, the president has basically largely, almost entirely stopped speaking about the coronavirus, right? He used to have those daily briefings. They got him in trouble. And now that they've gone away, in the president's world, it's as if it almost doesn't exist. Going to Tulsa and holding a rally like that against the quiet guidelines of your CDC does not place the coronavirus front and center. I would add the same on the economy. The president and his team are offering a very optimistic vision of an economic recovery. And in talking to them, they say, look, they believe that the president, as he said himself repeatedly, is a cheerleader for the nation, that the nation generally elects the optimist, that they prefer a hopeful version, especially when America is in such a grim place. But the risk for this is that people feel these things in their own realities. If you are one of those people who goes to, and we don't know exactly what will happen, but if you're one of those people who goes to the Tulsa rally and signs the waiver that you will not hold the campaign or the contractors or the vendors responsible, if you catch coronavirus and you catch coronavirus, you realize it's still a threat. If you're one of the people whose business is shuttered, who, is struggling to pay their mortgage or their rent, you understand the economy isn't doing well. And so there is a risk if that optimism rubs up against, in contrast with the grim facts of the reality.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.